a single model update of any AI technology is affecting 4 billion users. And that's more than any population governed by any government. And it's way more than, what leaders can touch in their own organizations. But leaders and even employees definitely are impacting AI today because AI learns from behaviors, maybe even more so than from data. It pattern matches. And so how we're using it is training it.
Can you achieve extraordinary results while making the world a better place? I'm Bruce Temkin, and together we'll explore how. Welcome to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Join me as I speak with visionary leaders and top experts to uncover the secrets of humanity-centric leadership. Ready to rethink leadership? Let's dive in. Welcome back to Humanity at Scale. Leadership today doesn't come with much room to hide. Pressure is constant, decisions move fast, and leaders are being judged not just on results, but on what their choices signal about values, dignity, and who really matters when things get uncomfortable. At the same time, the technology shaping our organizations and increasingly our society are scaling faster than our ability to slow down and reflect on what we're embedding into them. Which brings us to a question leaders are quietly wrestling with right now. How do you lead with humanity when the stakes are high, the pressure is constant, and people are watching every move you make? Today's guest is someone who has lived that question from the inside. Heidi Lorenzen spent years in senior leadership roles inside large organizations, where decisions carried real human consequences. She's also built a 35-year career at the center of Silicon Valley and emerging technology as an executive at companies like Polycom, Acela, Autonomy, and BusinessWeek, and now as Chief Content Officer at e.Republic, the leading media and intelligence platform for state and local government and education. More recently, she's expanded that lens as the founder and executive producer of the Humanity Code, a documentary and global impact campaign focused on ensuring our highest human values don't get lost as AI and other systems scale faster than our ability to reflect. Heidi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bruce.
Heidi, before we get into all that wonderful stuff, especially the humanity stuff, I'm wondering if we get a little bit more on your background. You spent many years inside of large organizations. Can you tell a little bit about your early part of your career?
Yeah, so my career has actually touched technology, communication, and human impact. And I'd say that one of the common through threads is that it's been very global. So I've lived and worked across Asia and Europe, as well as in the United States. So um, I think I like to think anyway that my experiences have kind of given me a chance to see how technologies land very differently depending on culture, industries, values, and even institutions. And one thing that I've noticed, and particularly now, this is just becoming super obvious, is that technology actually amplifies the values and the power structures of the systems that it enters. And technology scales very quickly, just to the theme of your podcast. And yet, leadership models, governance, all of those things don't scale. They're rather slow to adjust. So that is, when AI, generative AI, kind of came onto the scene a couple of years ago, um, I just felt like I had an obligation to bring some of my learnings. And I would say a lot of that also came from Singularity University, where we trained executives on the exponential change of technology. Um, so I kind of came to this realization that we were in a really massive moment for humanity, not to get very lofty, but that's what inspired me to start the Humanity Code, which to me is, really just about raising awareness and kind of being a living lens to what's going on right now in this very unique time.
Cool. Well, I want to back up sort of several years,
Yeah.
and the discussion about like the role of technology and how leadership works is certainly something you think of later in your career, right? When you get to that, what early experiences did you have that you can now look back on and say, okay, that really pushed me into thinking about humanity and leadership the way I do today?
When you started framing the question, the first thing that popped to my mind was when I was at Polycom. So that was I started there in the what was that? The early two no, sorry, 1999, and the I was actually living in Singapore when SARS hit. And SARS was kind of, the test run for COVID, if you will. And at that point, people weren't flying, and also people were very, very scared. And Polycom, for those who don't know, was a leader at the time in video conferencing. I always joke it took a pandemic to actually complete my job of driving adoption of video conferencing. Um, but um, at that time, that technology became a way to keep the connection among people at a time when literally they couldn't. I mean, there wasn't all the technology that we have today back then. And so I'd say that was probably one of the first indicators to me of just how critical technology can be and how important it is to sustain kind of that human component of leadership.
So let's talk about the humanity code for a little
Mm.
bit. Most people go through their careers and go from one job to another. Sometimes staying in a job for a long time, sometimes not. But you decided to augment that sort of normal professional path of job to job and go off on the side on a different angle and do the humanity code. So I want to dig into that first of all with what was the trigger for you that you decided that you had the energy and passion and needed to go off and do this thing?
I honestly couldn't help myself. I could not do it is the best way to describe it. It was one of those moments where, something took over, and I just really felt an intense obligation to do something. Part of it might have been self-processing, but really it was more I knew, based on having spent, several years at Singularity University, again, where every day we were living that future. We were talking about AI all the time before it was even, cool to do so. And we even sometimes had a robot as our receptionist. So we were living in the future, but more importantly, we were helping executives and entrepreneurs understand that not only can our brains not process, our brains are linear and technological change is exponential. So our brains literally cannot keep up. But also that it done right, we can take technology and turn it to, help solve some of what we call the global brand challenges. So that was sort of just, in my DNA by that point. And then when ChatGPT came online, I just realized, wow, humanity and leaders are just so not ready for this point in time. And they're probably, afraid because we've all seen the movies that make you afraid about AI, starting with Hal. They also just probably don't get it, and they feel like, "Oh, I don't have anything to do with this. This is out of my control." And I wanted to ensure that people felt, first of all, that it was a much more nuanced point in time. It wasn't just scary, but the people felt a sense of agency, that they actually had something that they can do, or that they can do to actually shape the future, but also to be really aware that if we don't get this moment in human history right, that, uh, if we're not super intentional is the word that I like to use. If we're not super intentional about what we want from this moment in time, essentially, AI is going to create the future, intentional or not. We aren't we haven't had the best um, history as a human species. We do dumb things, and AI basically learned from that, and that's what it's continuing to learn from. And yet, we also are a beautiful species. We have these big hearts. We all share a common vision for what we really want from life. And, so my hope is that, through the humanity code, we can continue our to help people understand that they do have agency to potentially shape a better future while we actually still have time.
Cool. So we'll get back to the humanity code, but you brought up, of course, HAL. And for our
Yeah.
younger listeners, that's from 2001 Space Odyssey. That
Yep.
is the representation of an AI that took over the entire operations and realized that humans were the problem, and started up now. But let's talk about technology for a second, because I mean, if we look back at history, technology sort of from fire
Yeah,
to
exactly.
cloud computing, whatever has generally helped society. They all have side effects for sure. I mean, fire burnt down
Yep.
cavemen
Villages.
houses and things, right.
Yep.
Made roast pork, but also burnt huts.
That's it.
Um, so what is it about AI? Because you've been involved in other technology, Polycom. I mean, that was a video. Some could say video conferencing is going to ruin humanity, but that wasn't the thing that sparked you for the humanity code. So what was it about ChatGPT and this technology that made you think, I really need to step in and do what I can for this one?
The main thing is it has the power to be autonomous, and it will be autonomous soon. And that is probably the driving force, that we have this small window of time where we actually can shape AI. And when I say we, I'm not just talking about the Sam Altmans of OpenAI of the world. I'm talking about literally every person that's interacting with AI. Every interaction shapes it somehow. And as you said, fire either cooked our food or it burned down villages, and nuclear technology, can power cities, but it has also flattened them. And, so with AI, what's different is that, yes, it at this moment has the power to, help us, and it already is. It's doing great things in medicine. It's doing, um, great things in education, but it also has the power to harm. We've already seen horrible stories where, it's convinced people to commit suicide. So that's already the case, and it's not even yet in control, right? I mean, when I say in control, meaning it's not yet autonomous, it's not yet fully making decisions on its own. And we can, if we, kind of collectively, and it's a tall order, but we can actually take this moment, and certainly, the Sam Altmans and those who are running Anthropic and Google Gemini and all of that, they definitely have an important obligation to imprint humanity's best interests in mind, if you will, before that window closes. But all of us have that capability.
So let's go back specifically to the humanity code. Um, how would you describe its goal, and where are you at with that effort?
Yeah, so, the Humanity Code, its main goal is awareness raising. And when it first, kind of like I said, it took over me. Um, I didn't really have a predetermined goal of, how that looked. And I mentally explored a number of things. Do I write a book? Do I write a blog? Do I have a podcast? And
And
yes,
by the way, I did all of those. So that's the humanity at scale story. Go ahead.
amazing, amazing. And so what I initially started with was kind of a two-pronged path. One was, yes, I started writing about it. And then I actually did start a podcast myself, the Humanity Code Conversations. But haven't focused on a book. That may come. But what just really kept I don't know, coming to me is that we need to reach as many humans on this planet as possible. And so I felt that film was a way to best bring that to life and reach more people than, say, a podcast that maybe, my LinkedIn circle would pay attention to. And so found an amazing director who's, as heart led as one needs to be for this, but also super interested in AI. You find a lot of people in film right now that are averse to AI, but he sees again the potential. And so we are in the early stages of that, where we have this storyline, we have the people that we want to bring into that conversation. There's a really important story arc that we've identified. And so the hope is, as with all things, raise the funds to bring that to life.
So what's your hope that, looking at the end of it,
Yeah.
what do you hope to look back and say it was and it accomplished?
Yeah. Um, Number one, that those who actually do have very big power right now to shape AI, um, do think, more about the implications of it. They're thinking longer term. They're thinking of this not as a moment of innovation, but a moment of stewardship, that they are literally shaping our future civilization. Um, and so there are some that are certainly thinking that way, and may not need the humanity code to further influence them, but maybe it can help deepen their thinking. And then beyond that the narrative about AI shifts from one of efficiency and innovation to one of, again, this stewardship of being really mindful of what we're creating right now, that people start talking about what is the future that we really want as humans. um and that's the narrative, because right now, everything that you read about AI is, oh, create more efficiency, but essentially, we're just at this point trying to be more efficient at what we've always done, as opposed to being super intentional around, where we want to be as a society. So, rather than, if we keep going the way we are, we're going to be the robots. We're just going to keep, automating and amplifying and accelerating, kind of the things that we've been doing, as opposed to, trying to really create um, a, business models, world models, et cetera, that are more in line with what we really, really want as humans.
When you think about the best of humanity, right, which is what you want to capture and all of this, what qualities do you feel most urgent to protect or to encode in technology?
Yeah, I think, and that's something I ask a lot of people too, because one of the critical things that we have to do right now is to align to the degree that we can on what those are. And of course, again, there are cultural differences about what those values are. So it's not an easy task, but it's certainly anything that kind of comes from the heart. So being able to, you know, and grow and self-actualize, if you will, just become your, create your best self or express your best self. Um, Empathy for others, being able to understand the condition that others are and, not look down upon it or dismiss it. um, a sense of community, right? We crave being with each other, relying on each other. That's another, and one, just to go outside the human realm, but it's very interconnected. Um, to also protect our environment because literally that's kind of another existential crisis that AI can help or hurt. Um, and so when people picture what a beautiful future looks like, you tend to picture green and verdant and plants and all of that. You don't picture nuclear power plants, right? And so I think that's part of it. And to kind of go back to your explanation of who Hal was, to take the environmental question to a total extreme, right? Just to make a point. If we were to say to AI, solve, the climate crisis, it would, in all of its intelligence, eventually deduce that we humans are the problem of that. And then that would be an existential crisis if we don't train it to say, we want to solve, the climate crisis, but we also kind of love being humans and we love we love staying alive and we hope to see this through. So you know, figure out a way to address both at the same time. Keep us alive and solve climate crisis.
So one of the things, I write and talk about a lot of these topics because I think they're central to humanity at scale.
Yeah.
And one of the things that makes me hopeful, and I
Mhm.
wonder if it makes you hopeful, is the fact that we've had, if you talk about the environment, or you talk about all these crises around our values, they existed already, right? And we were slowly flowing away from the probably a lot of the wonderfulness of humanity that you would say we want to protect. And it's
Right.
almost like AI has done us a favor, right? It's
Yeah.
given us the opportunity to confront that and
Yes.
be much more intentional about what are our values. Because, I talk to lots of leaders and they might talk about the values, but they don't show up, necessarily, right? But with AI, we're forced to be explicit about those things in order for them to be encoded in the way we want to operate. So, does that give you hope?
Yeah, it really does, and I think that's probably one of the biggest gifts. I agree with you 100% that, AI, is actually forcing us to answer the questions that we have been avoiding for thousands of years. What does it actually mean to be human? What do we actually want? And, and what can we do to create that? So that definitely does give me hope. And again, the other big piece that gives me hope that I alluded to is that there still is time for us to shape it.
If you're enjoying this episode, make sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss a conversation. We've got plenty more great stories coming your way.
I agree. This total time. I want to shift the focus away from the big picture, right? Which
Yep.
is we know society and framing
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that.
exactly. It's a
To,
very lofty,
yeah, which which
yeah,
I which I want us all to stay. I don't want us to divert
right.
attention in general away from that, just for the moment. Uh,
Yeah,
and and talk to, because the people listening to the podcast, a lot of them are just leaders who
yep,
don't go to work thinking they're going to shape society
right.
that day, that
They're
moment.
the one.
Yeah. So what's your advice to a leader, given what you're
Mhm.
working on and what you know about AI and what you think about values and leading? What do you say to a senior leader going into work who might be overwhelmed by this sort of there's this future going on, but I got to lead now and I want to be more human, but I don't know. Like, what's your advice to leaders?
Yeah. I would say one kind of, one last lofty thing
Stay
is
lofty. Stay.
that,
I don't want to get off that in
yeah,
general.
yeah. One last thought though that brings it straight to what an individual can do. So is, a single model update, any AI technology is affecting 4 billion users. And that's more than any population governed by any government. And it's way more than, leaders can touch, in their own organizations. But leaders and even employees, so, I want to even take it down beyond just leaders, definitely are impacting AI today because AI learns from behaviors, maybe even more so than from data. It pattern matches. And so how we're using it is training it. And so that means that, corporate leaders are quietly becoming the most important policymakers in the world and that that the there it has a big impact. And so what can they do? Um Number 1 is just starting off asking the right questions. It's not what can we do faster? It's what are we actually trying to create? Where are we going? What will the outcomes of this be? Ideally, they're able to also think about, what are called sort of second order in, outcomes, if you will, the sometimes the unintentional consequences. But even if they, they're not thinking about that or don't want to go there, just focusing on what is the direct outcome of what we're trying to do with AI right now. So, if you're, I don't know, a designer and you're creating new graphic designs, if you're just accepting the first thing that, comes out of the AI, so to speak, and you're not prompting it and pushing it and all of that, you're already kind of teaching it, you're giving up that that symbiosis and even control, right? So that's teaching it something. So starting with the question, but then also not not giving up that sense of human control in that process. I think those are probably, two of the big things right out of the gate.
One of the things that I'm trying to push, which sounds like it's aligned with your message, is that leaders need to understand two things. One is that there is no trade-off between succeeding in an organization and improving humanity. You don't have to make a choice
Yeah,
of
right,
one
exactly,
or the other.
exactly.
And the
Yeah,
second part of that is that over time, the only way to sustain success is by focusing on humanity.
mhm,
Right. So in the short term, one could easily make an argument that you can be successful without focusing on the human impact.
right.
Um, is that part of your message? And how do you retrain people to think about long-term success and caring about humanity?
It is more than anything a mindset shift. I do agree with that 100%. Leadership decisions, we used to talk a lot about future proofing, get your company ready for the future. Yes. And what you're really doing is you're building the scaffolding, if you will, for our next civilization. And because of some of these other, existential crises and also the pace of technological change, Future proofing just isn't enough anymore. It almost becomes a moot point because there's so much that has the potential to like wipe out anything that any company is trying to do. And also, um, coming back to the human element there, there's trying to remember. It's been proven. It was MIT that companies that use AI to elevate their people, not replace them, actually have a 2 to 3x productivity gains. So right there, you're getting those short-term gains, right? The productivity gains that address the quarterly decision making, the quarterly incentives that we have, and yet you are actually elevating the people in your company. You're helping them grow, help them contribute more, and not replace them.
So I'm going to ask you some questions about the future, but first I'm going to just sort of finish off on the humanity code. When do you hope to complete the project? Where is it? You said you're trying to get still line up the funding. What's the timing?
First of all, I don't think of it as a project. I think of it as, a lifetime initiative. Um, it will never be done. The film itself, it's purely contingent on, start and end. Obviously, hope to make a lot of traction next year. AI can definitely help as well.
Well, I love that AI, and I want to talk about that. We'll come back for a second because one of the things that hit me when we talk about values is that values, in some regard, are contextual, right? Like you even talked about how some of the directors and artists, right, were interested in AI because they worry about it taking over their roles. But if you think about just sort of the film industry, right? Yes, AI can potentially replace some of the activities that a whole bunch of people do, but inherently, is that there's no notion that that's a bad thing or a good thing, right? We don't have a lot of people who are handwriting books anymore,
Right,
right? That didn't make society worse.
right,
Uh,
right.
so how do we determine what is good values and bad values? Because they're in some of them are contextual.
I think the first thing is to be able to acknowledge or figure out what is, you know, what when your judgment is simply because you're going outside of your comfort zone versus, is it good or bad? People don't like change. That's why change management is a huge, a huge industry. This is the biggest change management, initiative that we have underway. So I think that's the first step is just acknowledging, okay, is this just different or is it bad? And if it's just different, then it I think one of the exercises that you do is, okay, well, how can we live with this? How can we make this work? And kind of move in a direction that it becomes comfortable or at least tolerable. Uh, and then and then you can take it from there. That's what I still see so many people with AI, saying, "Oh, I don't like it. I'm not going to use it, or it's scary, or whatever." And it's because they literally haven't used it. How can you understand something, or how can you fear something or have a reaction to it if you don't really understand it? So, I always encourage people that, are kind of, like AI's again, no good. I encourage them to just try it. Are you using it? Whether that's on a personal level or encouraging your teams to use it at work, because the more that you understand it, the more that you can, first of all, probably you will stop fearing it as much. And you can actually then take meaningful actions to both improve your business as well as ultimately, hopefully, improving humanity.
Great. Now we'll look into the future. 5, 10 years. What are you most concerned about, and what gives you the most hope?
What concerns me most is the big unknown, and that is when artificial general intelligence will actually take place. So that, no, they call it AGI, the singularity. It's that point in time when AI fully exceeds our intelligence, all levels, by far. So already AI, is passing more than 20 of those common tests, so there's, the bar exam or whatever. But AGI is when it's fully surpasses us, because that's the time, if by then we haven't done more or haven't done all we can, not just more, but all we can to align it with our best interests in mind, our values in mind, our future in mind, the future of the planet in mind. If we haven't already done that by then, it will extrapolate, kind of from what it's learned, and it will go kind of on that path. So that's what scares me the most. The good news is the the people, last year there were a lot of people, or this year, I guess we're in still, we're fearing that that was going to be, more imminent. And there are still actually some people who say it's already too late, but those are the minority. Um, so anyway, so that's the biggest. So most are saying that there's like a 50% chance, though, that it'll be in the 2030s, that AGI. So we have some time, hopefully. What gives me the most hope is that we do have agency, we do have some time, and we do have the heart, if you will. We are innately built to want the best. And so you put those three things together: the agency, the time, and the heart, and we can do this.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a great place to end in that section and move on to my closing questions. I loved it.
Yep.
So these are the question I ask all of my guests. First one is, what's one leadership skill you believe will become even more important in the future?
Mindset shifts. And actually, putting it another way, adaptability is probably a more easier way to say it. So just the ability to adapt to any change, because that's just going to happen.
And if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing to make organizations more humanity-centric, what would it be?
Not fearing the unknown, not fearing change.
Cool. And what's one final piece of advice you'd like to leave with our listeners?
If you don't know AI, get to know AI. If you know AI very, very well, think about, with every decision and use, think about the long-term implications, not just for yourself and your company, but for humanity. And right now we're recording at the tail end of 2025, so we've got the new year on the horizon, and that's a time when people think about intentions for themselves for the new year, intentions for the company, set goals and business plans and all of that. Add to that just this one little extra step of going beyond the worlds that we tend to live in, ourselves, our companies, our governments, to the longer, the bigger picture, literally, of civilization at large, because we are, whether we like it or not, or know it or not, we are all right now putting ourselves on a trajectory.
Great. Heidi, where can people follow your work and go deeper into the ideas you care about?
Yeah. So, website, thehumanitykode.ai, podcast on all the usual places, the Humanity Code conversations. And then me personally, which, is goes beyond the humanity code, of course, find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thanks for joining me on the show, Heidi. This has been great.
Thank you, Bruce. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the work that you're doing.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our conversation with Heidi. Now let's dive into the after show, a segment where I'll reflect on the key takeaways from this episode. Welcome to the after show. As I was listening back to this conversation with Heidi Lorenzen, what stayed with me wasn't any single prediction about AI. It was the steady way she kept returning to responsibility, without panic, without hype, and without pretending this moment is someone else's problem to solve. This wasn't a conversation about technology in the abstract. It was about what happens when the things we build start reflecting us back at scale. Here are 5 insights from this conversation that I kept coming back to. First, technology doesn't create values, it amplifies them. Heidi made an important observation early on. Technology amplifies the values and power structures of the systems it enters. That reframes the entire AI debate. The real risk isn't that AI suddenly becomes something inhuman. It's that it becomes very human, trained on our shortcuts, blind spots, and incentives. If leadership systems are rushed, extractive, or misaligned today, AI doesn't correct that. It accelerates it. Second, this moment is less about innovation and more about stewardship. One of the most striking shifts Heidi made was moving the conversation away from what's possible to what we're responsible for. When she talked about artificial general intelligence, the point at which AI would surpass human intelligence across most domains, what mattered wasn't the sci-fi framing. It was her insistence that we still have a window, however narrow, to shape what these systems optimize for. That turns leadership from a performance role into a custodial one. The third idea is that agency exists even when the system feels overwhelming. It would be easy to walk away from a conversation like this thinking, this is for governments or AI labs to figure out. Heidi pushed hard against that. AI learns through interaction. It pattern matches behaviors, which means every leader, every team, every organization using these tools is actively training them, whether intentionally or not. That quietly elevates everyday leadership decisions into something much larger than most people realize. The fourth is that better questions matter more than faster answers. When Heidi talked about advice for leaders, she didn't offer tactics. She offered a mindset shift. Instead of asking, how do we do this faster? She urged leaders to ask, what are we actually trying to create? That distinction is subtle, but it's the difference between using AI as an accelerant and using it as a design tool. One optimizes the present, the other shapes the future. And the final idea is that AI is forcing clarity we've historically avoided. One of the most hopeful moments in the conversation was the recognition that AI may be confronting us with questions humanity has long sidestepped. What does it actually mean to be human? What do we value beyond efficiency? What are we unwilling to automate anyway? As uncomfortable as this moment is, it's also unusually clarifying because ambiguity doesn't translate well into code. So I'll leave you with this. As you use AI in your own work, what are you unintentionally teaching it about what matters through the questions you ask, the shortcuts you accept, and the outcomes you reward? And if you want to sit with one more, what questions are you avoiding that the future is going to force you to answer anyway? That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And remember, you are the flame that can spark humanity at scale. One decision, one conversation, one moment at a time.
Thanks for tuning in to Humanity at Scale, Redefining Leadership podcast. Remember, true leadership isn't only about achieving short-term results. It's about creating a lasting positive impact on all of the people you touch. Join me next time as we uncover more insights and strategies for humanity-centric leadership. Until then, I'm Bruce Temkin. encouraging you to lead with purpose and empathy and to be the spark that elevates humanity at scale.